Congressman, I saw on the schedule today that there are 3 new spending programs to be voted on under suspension, plus we lost the Vietnam vote last night. I'm getting the very strong sense that the GOP members in the House didn't get it from last week, the election, and what it meant. What's the outlook right now on your race, and is that sense correct, that they don't get it?
I believe that most members of the outgoing Republican majority are working through a process that is probably similar to the 7 stages of grief. Some are in denial. Some are whatever the next stage is, and the next, and the next. But what I will say is I think it's a very dynamic environment. I believe that when my Texas colleague Joe Barton entered the race on Friday, that greatly increased the dynamic nature of this contest. I think we are involved as a conference in a very vigorous and very cordial debate over the future of our party, both within the Capitol building and beyond. And so that's how I would characterize it. You have every version of reaction to a crushing loss is evidence on the floor of the Congress today. But there is a lot of time between now and Friday, and I believe that members are thinking and talking and considering very deeply the import of the decision that we will make and the message that we will send come Friday.
Question on the phone.
Hey, this is John Hawkins from Right Wing News. If you were elected minority leader, what would your think the Republican Party's position in the House on that legal immigration should be?
Well, let me tell you what it should not be. It should not be the McCain-Kennedy bill that passed the Senate and will inevitably be the bill that comes straight at the House of Representatives. I think one of the reasons why Tom Tancredo and Steve King have both endorsed my candidacy for minority leader is because they know my heart. They know I have always supported border security first, supported the Sensenbrenner bill from its inception through its completion, and was pleased to see the border fence legislation become law. They also know my heart that I categorically oppose any legislation that would allow individuals whose first act in this country was a violation of our immigration laws to get right with the law without leaving the country. I define that as amnesty. Most Americans define that as amnesty. And while I did offer a compromise, a bill this summer with Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, to be candid, the debates over compromise are now over. The reality of our time is that the Democrats and the White House have majorities in the House and Senate to move the McCain-Kennedy bill. They have control of the floor in both chambers to move an amnesty bill. And what Republicans need to focus on now is using every weapon in our arsenal and every rhetorical power that we have to convey to the American people just how harmful it would be if we granted amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants during the 110th Congress. I am dedicated to that. I hope that my willingness to find some compromise would make me an even more credible voice in opposing amnesty, because it seems that one of the ways we've been dismissed on the right is with the suggestion that we don't want to solve the whole problem. And at least this summer I earned something of a reputation for wanting to solve the problem in a way that reflected conservative and Republican principles. But amnesty is not the answer. Amnesty is all we will get from the Senate. And as minority leader, I will lead our conference to do everything in our power to expose amnesty legislation, not if, but when it proceeds from the U.S. Senate. Question for the room.
As a follow-up, does that mean that you've changed your personal position on what should be done with guest worker plans? And do you, if you had a chance, would that be your, how would you move things if you actually got to see things through?
As I've told all of my colleagues, I stand by the legislation that Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison and I built, that we put border security first and exclusively, and then it would trigger a guest worker program outside the United States only after we completed border security measures. And applicants to that guest worker program would have to leave the United States of America to apply. We add into that strong employer enforcement sanctions. I believe then, I believe now that that is a solution that could work and could be acceptable to many conservatives, me included. But I want to say again, that ship has sailed. That compromise will not be considered. We are going to get the McCain-Kennedy bill. And anyone who thinks otherwise needs a math lesson. They have the math. They have control of the floor of the House and Senate now. I was heartened to hear that Senator John Kyle expressed a willingness in the last 24 hours to use the filibuster in the Senate to stop an amnesty bill. I would look forward to being a part of a House minority effort to back that rhetorically and to use every weapon in our arsenal. The American people do not support amnesty and do not want to see Congress pass amnesty legislation. But that being said, I still believe the idea that we floated was a good one, and if we were in a different universe, I would still be advocating for it.
Time for another question from folks on the phone.
This is John Fleischman from the Flash Report in California. Congressman, have you gotten any sense that your colleagues in the Republican conference feel that overspending plays any significant role in our losses? And I mean, do they feel like the appropriation process is controlled, or do they just kind of feel like, oh, it was the war and it was other reasons?
You know, John, I've been pleasantly surprised at the feedback that I'm getting in one-to-one meetings. I come to you from a morning full of back-to-back meetings. I have an afternoon full of back-to-back meetings. I'm on the phone since last Wednesday. I've been pleasantly surprised at the degree to which almost every member I have spoken to has been willing to accept that our departure from fiscal discipline and limited government played a central role in the erosion of the confidence of our core supporters around the country. Now, others will argue that there were other factors, and I don't quarrel with that. Iraq was a factor. Scandals were a factor. But there's that old proverb that says, if the foundations crumble, how can the righteous stand? The foundation of the governing majority for the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. was Ronald Reagan and Newt Gingrich's commitment to a government that lives within its means, a government that is smaller after Republicans are there than it was before they got there, to the notion that government that governs least governs best. And you wrap all of that in a commitment to the traditional moral values that hold our communities together. And you have the Republican coalition. So I've been pleasantly surprised, John, at the degree to which members will attribute some level of importance to the fact that we've doubled the national debt under Republican control. And as I said, we're engaged in a very good debate and discussion among our colleagues about the degree to which that played a major factor. And let me just say, some of you have written very generous things about me, and I'm grateful for that. But I don't think any member of the 109th Congress on the Republican side of the aisle is blameless in this regard, with the possible exception of Jeff Flake.